Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about thrifty habits for the new year. And I'm going to do some reflection on my first year of retirement where my thrifty habits are concerned. I hope that this helps someone out there today. Let's go. If you don't know me, I'm Bonita from Pennies to Dollars. I live in rural Kansas. I retired about a year ago and I am living a simple, frugal life, but I still travel. I have an RV and I like to do fun things. I just try to keep the cost to a minimum, but sometimes I save up for the things I really want to do and I am more lavish with my money at those times because I've made plans for those things. So, all of our frugal journeys are going to be different based on our priorities. The definition of being frugal is being economical, wise with your money, and using your resources wisely. That's what I try to do. It doesn't mean that you are a miser, it doesn't mean that you don't spend money, and it doesn't mean that you don't do fun things with your money or sometimes spend larger amounts on things that you have saved for and planned for. So that's what this channel is about. And I share my journey with you and the things that I learn along the way that I think might be helpful to other people. Just remember to be patient and flexible with yourself through this process. I know I have changed so much in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and now my 50s, and I'm almost 60. So these things will change as your priorities change, as your needs change, and as you reassess what is important to you through these different life chapters that we all have. I am an empty nester. I live in the country on a farm, so my needs might look way different than someone who still has children at home. But a lot of the basic concepts are the same no matter what chapter that you're in. And I wish I would have learned some of this earlier on, but I think experience is important. I think as we experience things, we know where we need to tweak things. And I think that that knowledge helps us because our journey is so personal. We know what's important to us. We have to figure out how to get ourselves what is important to us on the money that we have and still be able to put money back in case we need it for something else. And no one's path in that situation is going to look the same based on what your monthly bills are and what your priorities are. So the first thing that I do is I like to budget my spending. Now, I picked up my new calendar at the bank. They had an open house. They give away free calendars. I use this as my planner. I put in my kids' birth dates. I put in any income that I have coming in and what days those are. I list any cashback days that I get from credit cards because I immediately roll that over into my budget. I also look at when my bills are due. I have everything mapped out on this calendar so that I can keep up with what is going on in my life. As you budget for this next year, you're going to want to look at your spending habits, and they may change year to year based on what your needs are. And that's one of the things that I learned this year when I retired. I started dressing differently. I wasn't wearing the clothing that I wore to work. I was wearing more comfortable things that I wanted to wear at home. I was wearing a lot more shorts, a lot more casual shirts, a lot more yoga pants, things like that, a lot more tennis shoes. I was wearing casual clothing. And as I went through my stuff and started wearing my favorites all the time, it was amazing how quickly some of my stuff wore out or degraded during that time. I had to spend more money on clothing this past year, and I didn't see that coming. I did sell some stuff on eBay that didn't fit. I rolled that money back into my clothing budget, but I had to replace some shorts. I had to replace some tank tops. I had to replace some yoga pants. So those things were not on my radar. I didn't foresee how quickly some of my stuff was going to degrade and wear out when I wore it a lot more than I had before. When I was working, I just wore these occasionally on a weekend day, but I didn't wear them like 7 days a week. And I want to be comfortable. So these are things we have to think about as we're moving into our budget. It's not always going to look exactly the way it did last year based on what's going on. Now, since I spent more money on clothes this year, hopefully I won't have to this year. You also need to really review your spending habits. Are you an impulsive shopper? Do you pick up things when you think they're a good deal, or you pick up things when you think you could use that item? Are you able to put stuff back on the shelf if you realize you really don't have a place for it and it's really not that big of a need? You have to assess your spending habits to be able to get a really good budget that will fit your lifestyle, because a budget that is not accurate is really not going to help you at all, especially if you don't track your spending. Some of us don't realize how much stuff we pick up during the year that's not on our budget that really would fall in like a miscellaneous category. And many people don't even budget for miscellaneous. And so that category can get away from us. The next thing is to really audit your spending and your bills annually or more often if your prices are changing. So if your inflation is going up or the things you normally buy are going up, if your bills are sneaking up, like your phone bill sneaking up and your electric bill is sneaking up, we really have to stay on top of that so that we can not only maybe manage from our end by keeping some things turned off or unplugged or shut down in our homes that maybe are plugged in all the time. We have to look at ways we can manage if those things are starting to creep up. Are our auto insurance premiums creeping up? All of those things affect our final budget and our final tallies. And if our income isn't creeping up to match some of these other bills that are creeping up, we might have to really take a hard look at that, see if there's something we can do on our end to change that situation. Normal costs don't always stay the same during the year. And sometimes we'll make that budget in January and say, okay, this is my phone budget. Next thing you know, they're up in the taxes, they're up in all these miscellaneous weird fees that they add on, and your bill's gone up an extra $10 a month, which is an extra $120 a year. And if you're on a low income like me, that $120, where are you going to come up with that? So it's really important to stay on top of those bills. Automated payments are something that I do not do because I want to physically pay that and make sure that I'm staying on top of that bill to see if it's creeping up. And that's just something that I like to do. I'm very organized. I put it on that calendar. I don't miss due dates, so I don't have late fees. I don't have to worry about that. But for some people, those automated payments help because they're likely to maybe forget a payment and end up with a late fee. But for me, I'm very organized. I love numbers. And so putting on the calendar where I can physically pay that out each month and see what it's running and see if it's creeping up, that is important for me to stay on top of my game. Then look at anything that you can eliminate or reduce. Is there services you can negotiate? All of those areas are things we need to look at as we build our budget for the new year and during the year if those prices start changing. Review our premiums, review any memberships that we have and any subscriptions. Right now, we have 3 television subscriptions. We have AMC Plus, We have Hulu/Spotify, which my son and I share, and we have Amazon Prime. And then all of the rest of our TV is free. I have talked to people before that were paying upwards of $300 for television subscriptions, game subscriptions. Those things can really get away from you. One of the ladies I had talked to told me she didn't know how they were going to retire because of all these extra fees they have. And she opened up her phone and showed me she had over $300, she said, a month in subscriptions. I was just floored. I can't imagine trying to figure out how I was going to come up with $300 a month for something like that. And then if you are retired, like I am, look at any business memberships or business subscriptions or business groups that you were a part of that have dues. I was a member of some things that had dues. I let those go. I had to have 50 continuing education units every 2 years that were costly. And I let those go, and I chose not to renew my license as a nursing home administrator, which also had a fee for the license every 2 years. So if you're keeping some of those business memberships and licenses going, maybe evaluate those and say, am I going to use this again? Is it important to me or to my identity to keep that license going? I know a lady who's a retired nurse, and she's been retired for quite a long time, and they do struggle with money. And she hasn't let that license go. She said, I want to keep it because there's older people in my community, and I want to feel like I can help them and still be licensed in case I need to help somebody. So we all have personal reasons why or why not we might let those extra expenses go that are associated with a job that we had. But for me, I decided last year that I was ready to let that license go, let those extra costs for the CEU training go, and let those extra business memberships go. So I've touched on this just a little bit, but we need to be able to create our own boundaries and rules on our spending. So for us, we prioritize our values, and prioritizing vacations for me is important. That's something I always looked forward to when I was working. I lived for my next vacation. When my kids were at home, we would take one during spring break, and then we would also take another one during the summer. I try to take at least one a year, usually more than one. They're still frugal. I still don't spend a lot of money, but they're a priority for me. And I need to realize that when I'm making my budget. I also look at quality versus quantity. I may spend a little bit more on something if I think it's a better value or a better quality item because I don't want to keep replacing something that breaks down. I also will look at the value over the price. I right now have a triple A insurance premium on my car insurance. I can pay that annually and save a lot of money. I used to have a car insurance that I paid monthly, and they were charging me $9 a month service fee just to make those payments monthly. And then I broke it down to like four every 6 months, four payments, and I was still having to pay a fee. And I realized how much I was paying in fees per year on top of my car insurance just to break that down. And if I could scrape together enough money to pay that annually, I saved a bunch of money. So look at those values over price items and see if some of those are available to you. And then use your credit wisely. This is something that I do. I know not everyone agrees with this, but I put everything I can on a credit card that doesn't have an extra fee. I really watch for those fees because some places have started adding fees if you use your card. If it's going to charge me a fee on my card that is more than my cash back amount, I am going to write a check or pay cash. And yes, I do still have checks. But if it is something that I can get cash back on, there's no extra fee for using my card, I'm going to put it towards my card with the highest cash back. And I roll that money back into my budget. And that cash back adds up to several $100s per year for me. And then I also make sure I live within my means. I don't use those credit cards to spend beyond what I can go home and then pay right out of my checking account to pay those credit cards off immediately. I stay within my budget and I stay on top of those credit card bills. I run a zero balance all of the time. And so I just use them for that cash back. Another thing that I do is I set my grocery shopping strategies, and I've talked about this several times. This is what has saved us during inflation. I know my prices. I know what any given item costs as far as what I am willing to pay for it. Sometimes I'm shocked when I walk through the store and see what things cost because I never pay that amount. And I'll come home and tell my husband, "You wouldn't believe this. This is what butter costs." Or this is what hamburger costs per pound. And I'm just floored because I never pay that regular price. I make sure that I know my prices as far as I know what my price point is. I know what I'm willing to pay for it. And unless it falls in my price point, I substitute and I buy something else and we eat something else. I only buy it when it is within my range that I have set on what I am willing to pay for any given item. Otherwise, I skip it and I just figure out something else to make. I use my coupons, I use my rebates, I make sure that my digital coupons are downloaded. I make sure that I upload my receipts for rebates. That's another big part of my budget. I get back several hundred per year doing that. And I also save up my points on Fetch and on Receipt Pal and on these different places that I then cash in and use to help buy Christmas at the end of the year. I know where the clearance areas are in my stores and I check them out first when I go in there. I check the produce area, I check the markdown aisle, I check the meat markdown, I check the dairy markdown, including yogurt and milk. And those are the ways that I shop. And then I buy those things because I know I can freeze them immediately or use them immediately or they'll last beyond the date. And that is what I use to then prepare my meals around and figure out what I'm going to serve that week. I cook once and we eat 2 or 3 times off of what I cook once. So I do bulk cook. It makes it easier on me. My husband's great with leftovers. Sometimes I'll cook a couple of bulk things that week and then we'll alternate so we don't get tired of it. He takes his lunch to work. We do all of these things to help us save money. So then when we take those annual vacations, we know we can eat out a couple of times a day. We know we can do things that are low cost and still come home debt free. And that's what our goal is to remain debt free. I do a pantry check and I add things to my pantry check for my grocery list, but usually it's perishables. Like I went to grocery shop this week when I was in town. I bought ground sausage from Aldi. I bought sliced cheese from Aldi and I bought a dozen eggs. I didn't need anything else. We're going to go another week just on buying those items because I already have everything I need in my pantry, everything I need in my freezer. I don't need to purchase a bunch of extra stuff because we don't need it. I also consider whether it's good to buy something pre-owned or whether it's good to buy something refurbished. Some of the clothing that I've replaced this year was pre-owned. I bought it off of eBay. I looked at the prices. I have things that I like that fit me really well, like a certain brand of yoga pants, a certain size. I know if I order those, they are going to fit me because they're the ones that I'm wearing now and I love them. I look for them to be marked down. Sometimes on eBay, they will allow you to send an offer to someone to give them a cheaper amount than what you have it priced at. So if I click that I liked this item or it's on my watch list, usually within a few hours or less, I will get an offer from the seller. Hey, I'll sell it to you for even less than I had it posted. And then you can counter offer and say, hey, I'll pay you even less than you counter offered me. and most of the time they will take it. So that keeps me from going out and searching for this specific brand or size of something that I know I need to replace, and I can get it at an affordable cost. So that's how I've replaced most of my clothes this year that I needed, is by doing that. So these are some of the thrifty habits that I have that I use on a regular basis. I will be going and adjusting my budget for the new year. Now that I have my calendar, I'm starting to fill that out so that I can get organized for this next year. And then I will be tracking my spending to make sure that I stay where I need to stay. Now, even with me buying food like that, we've been at the top of our budget of me buying food, replacing food, stocking food. So if people are buying food at face value price, I can imagine how high their budget and their spending has been, because we're at the top of our budget. We spend $245 a month on food, and I've gone over that several times shopping this way. So when I see I'm at the top of my budget or I'm overspending in an area, I can use what I have here and just back off the spending to get my spending back in alignment with my budget. And so those are some of the things I do during the year to make sure that I stay in budget. And tracking is a huge part of that. If you would have told me 30 years ago that I needed to track my spending, I would have been like, I don't have time for that. There's no way I can do that. I'm fine. I still have money in the bank. But since I've retired early and I'm on a low income, I see the benefit and the value of doing that. And I don't think I'll ever stop. When I first started, I thought I'm going to do this for a month or two, just see where I'm at. It was so eye opening. I've continued to do it. So, those are some of my thrifty habits. If you have some, please list them in the comments below. I would love to read them. I learn so much from you guys. And if this has been helpful to you, please give me a thumbs up. And I hope to see you in the next video.